My fiancée demanded that I take her last name and sever ties with my family because they didn't align with her social status. In response, I broke off the engagement and cut her out of my life. I'm a 28-year-old man from a tight-knit Italian-American family that owns and operates a chain of successful restaurants. Our family's culinary legacy goes back 3 generations, beginning with my grandfather, who came to this country with nothing but his recipes and an iron will. I've worked in our restaurants since I was old enough to wash dishes, and now I manage 2 of our most thriving locations. 3 years ago, I met my fiancée, a 26-year-old woman, when she dined at one of our restaurants. She was intelligent, ambitious, and working as a marketing executive at a major firm. Things progressed quickly. Our chemistry was undeniable. Within a year, we were living together, and 6 months ago, I proposed. That's when things began to shift. She started making remarks about how outdated and patriarchal it was for women to traditionally take their husband's last name. I respected her opinion and assured her she could keep her last name if she wanted to. But that wasn't enough. One evening at dinner, she said, "Actually, I'd like you to take my last name. My family name is dying out, and I'm an only child. Your family has multiple sons to carry on the name." I was stunned but tried to have a rational conversation. I explained how much my family name meant to our restaurant brand and heritage. She dismissed my concerns, suggesting we could simply rebrand the restaurants. When I brought up the cultural significance of these traditions in Italian families, she accused me of being sexist and clinging to outdated customs. Her demands didn't stop there. She began insisting that we relocate to California, where her parents live after getting married. When I pointed out that I couldn't abandon the family business, she framed it as an opportunity for me to break free from what she called my family's suffocating influence. She would say things like, "Your family has too much control over your life. You need to start prioritizing me." The situation reached a boiling point during a dinner with both of our families last week. She had been pressuring me to announce the name change and our move, but I'd been stalling. Midway through dinner, she tapped her glass to get everyone's attention. "We have some exciting news," she began, ignoring the alarmed look on my face. "After the wedding, we'll be moving to California, and to mark our fresh start, my future husband has agreed to take my family name." The room fell silent. My parents and brothers stared at me, stunned. I hadn't agreed to any of this. Before I could respond, she continued, now addressing my family directly. "Additionally, we believe it's important to establish our identity as a couple, so we'll be limiting contact with extended family during the first year of marriage. It's a common practice recommended by marriage counselors." My mother's face dropped, and my father's expression hardened. My youngest brother muttered something under his breath and stormed away from the table. Her parents, on the other hand, were beaming with pride. I sat there, frozen, as I watched this nightmare unfold. The woman I thought I knew had revealed her true self. She hadn't just made these announcements without my agreement. She had orchestrated a public ambush to corner me into compliance. Later, when we were alone, I confronted her. "What was that about? We never agreed to any of this." She rolled her eyes. I had to push the issue. "You were never going to stand up to your family on your own. This is what's best for us." "Best for us or best for you?" I asked. "You didn't even discuss this with me. You just made huge decisions about our future without my input." "Because I knew you'd never agree otherwise," she snapped. "Your family has so much control over you that you can't think for yourself. Someone had to take charge." That's when she gave me an ultimatum. Either I commit to taking her last name and cutting ties with my family, or she would call off the wedding. I think she expected me to cave, but instead, I felt an unexpected sense of clarity. "You're right about one thing," I said quietly. "This wedding does need to be called off." Her smug expression morphed into shock. "What? You can't be serious." "We're done," I said, standing up. "I'm not going to let you isolate me from my family or erase my identity just to satisfy your ego." Her reaction was explosive. "You can't do this to me," she screamed. "I've already sent out save the dates. I've booked vendors. My family has spent thousands on deposits. You should have thought of that before trying to manipulate me," I said calmly. I'll repay your family for any deposits they've lost. Her anger quickly shifted to tears. Baby, I'm sorry. I just got carried away. You know how much this means to me. We can work this out. But I was done. The mask had slipped, and I saw her manipulation for what it was. I began packing my essential belongings. Documents, clothes, my laptop, while she followed me around the apartment, alternating between threats and pleas. That's when she dropped the real bombshell. Fine. You want the truth? I never planned to limit contact with your family to just 1 year. I was going to make sure we never saw them again after the wedding. I paused my packing and turned to face her. What? Your family is beneath us, she hissed. My parents are connected to the best social circles in California. Did you really think I'd let your immigrant family embarrass me in front of my friends? God, the way your mother dresses, and how your father still has that thick accent. The venom in her tone made my blood boil, but before I could respond, she kept going. Once we were married and living in California, I was going to make sure we were far too busy to visit them. Too many important social events, charity galas, exclusive parties, your family would never fit in. Eventually, you would have forgotten about them entirely and embraced my world instead. She called her parents, and within the hour, they arrived at our apartment, ready to mediate. Her father tried to act like the voice of reason. Son, let's discuss this like adults, he said calmly. My daughter comes from a certain social standing, and we need to maintain appearances. Surely you can understand that. What I understand, I replied, is that you raised a daughter who thinks it's acceptable to ridicule immigrants and look down on hardworking people, just because they don't fit into your elite social bubble. Her mother stiffened. We're not elitists, she countered. We simply believe that marriage works best between people of similar backgrounds. Your family's culture is just so different from ours. The prejudice, thinly veiled as politeness, was staggering. They spoke about my family as if we were some kind of shameful secret. Suddenly, all those times my fiancée insisted we host family gatherings at restaurants instead of our home, all the excuses she made for why my parents couldn't meet her friends, it all made sense. I'm leaving, I said, picking up my bags. Don't try to contact me again. My fiancée made one last, desperate jab. Your family will never be good enough for high society, she sneered. You're choosing to stay in your little ethnic bubble instead of moving up in the world. I turned back and looked at all of them. No, I'm choosing love and acceptance over prejudice and arrogance. My family might not meet your definition of high society, but at least they don't judge people based on their accents or their backgrounds. Their stunned expressions were priceless. They had shown me their true colors, and there was no undoing it. That night, I walked out and went straight to my brother's house. One look at my face, and he knew something serious had happened. After I explained everything, he just nodded and said, I never liked her anyway. The next few days were chaotic. My ex-fiancée launched a smear campaign, posting on social media about how I had abandoned her and betrayed her family's trust. Of course, she conveniently left out the part about wanting me to sever ties with my family or her disdainful remarks about immigrants. Her friends bombarded me with nasty messages, calling me a coward for not manning up and accepting her family's generous offer to welcome me into their social circle. Some even suggested I should feel lucky that someone of her status had considered marrying me. The worst moment came when she showed up unannounced at my parents' house with her mother in tow, thinking they could appeal to my mother's kindness. They found her in the middle of preparing Sunday dinner, wearing her flour-dusted apron as the kitchen filled with the rich aroma of her famous lasagna. We just want to understand, her mother said, her tone dripping with condescension. Maybe if your family tried harder to assimilate, to be more American, this wouldn't be an issue. My mother, who had been quiet until then, finally spoke up. I am American, she said firmly. I became a citizen 30 years ago. My children were born here. But being American doesn't mean forgetting who we are or where we came from. My ex-fiancé tried to interrupt, but my mother wasn't finished. When I came to this country, I had nothing. No money, no English, no friends. But I had pride in my culture. No one could take that away from me, and no one will take it away from my children. Then, In a moment that made me prouder than ever, my mother pointed to the door and said in her accented English, "Now get out of my house. My sauce is simmering, and I don't have time for people who think they're better than others." After they left, my mother pulled me into a hug and whispered, "You made the right choice, son." A week later, I returned to the apartment with my brothers to collect the rest of my belongings. She was there waiting. This time, instead of yelling or crying, she tried a different tactic. "I was wrong," she said softly. "I'll accept your family. We can have dinner with them once a month. They can even visit us in California sometimes. Just, please don't throw away what we have." But as I looked at her, all I could see was the scorn in her eyes when she mocked my father's accent. All I could hear was her voice saying my family would embarrass her. Some things once seen cannot be unseen. "No," I said simply. "I deserve someone who loves all of me, including my family and my heritage. And my family deserves better than someone who sees them as a source of shame." As I walked out of that apartment for the final time, all I felt was relief. Yes, calling off the wedding was expensive and messy. Sure, some mutual friends took her side and cut ties with me. But I had preserved something far more important than money or social status: my self-respect and my bond with my family. Now, I'm focused on healing and reconnecting with my roots. Every Sunday, I'm at my parents' house for family dinner, helping my mom in the kitchen as she passes down old family recipes. My father shares stories of his childhood in Italy, and this time, I listen more carefully, appreciating the courage it took for him to build a new life in a foreign country. Sometimes, I think about how close I came to losing all of this: the warmth of family gatherings, the pride in our heritage, the unconditional love and acceptance. My ex-fiancée thought she was offering me an upgrade in life, but in reality, she was asking me to trade something priceless for superficial social status.